Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third heat, or the start of the third heat for the Road to Vegas Cloud Sport Road to Vegas competition. I am Edward Hunter, and I'm with my co-commentator Ali Tack, and we're here in
Hi.
Berlin for this third round. And really great to be back after a long 2-week break, I guess. So, how you feeling today, Ali?
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. As you say, the third round of the competition. So we're getting towards the pointy end now of it, and some of the drivers are starting to really show themselves as dominant in these Formula E cars. But yeah, it's going to be a fantastic race today, I think.
Yeah, Cloud Sport Road to Vegas, of course, as ever, sponsored by Playseat, powered by Formula E. Best not to forget that. Anyway, as I'm just watching on the screen, and we see a big crash there, right where that is the brutal chicane that claimed a lot of victims in real life with Bob the Bollard. No bollards here, just big square brick walls. But yeah, I wasn't sure who that was who wrecked it there, but I'm sure they've escaped embarrassment for now. So let's talk a little bit about the Road to Vegas competition before qualifying starts for this first semi-final of the day. First of four, of course, and I think about 12 have qualified for each group, so slightly reduced field, but we hopefully most of them all show up this time. A little bit of attendance issues last time out in Paris, but yeah, so the competition structure then. So it's four. We have four different. We've done two so far in Long Beach and Paris. Of course, Scotsman Graham Carroll, who's in this first group, won first time out in Long Beach, and in the second round in Paris, it was Gregor Hutu, the famous Gregor Hutu, won in Paris from quite close to Oli Picala, his teammate, right behind him, but Gregor Hutu gaining maximum score from that round, and so important to remember, of course, that there's a drop score rule too. So if someone doesn't do well today, they're not necessarily out of it completely, even though there's only four rounds.
That's right. And I mean, Graham Carroll, not his best result last time out in Paris. He was leading the competition coming into that round, having won the Long Beach race. So that drop score could see him in good shape towards the end of the season, even though last weekend maybe he didn't get the race that he wanted.
Yeah, and just a quick reminder, of course, what the all-important prize is for the which is the grand final. That all the top 10 guys, there's 10, remember, of course, almost forgot to mention that. The 10 of the guys from these four races qualify to go to the Visa Vegas eRace in Las Vegas, and that's they'll be going against the 20 real-life Formula E drivers for a total prize pot. Ooh, that's a bit actually used to going a bit heavy in the chicane there, really rubbing the wall. And the prize pot is $1 million, I believe, and the overall winner gets 200,000. It could be one of the 20 Formula E drivers, or it could be one of the sim racing guys. I wouldn't put my money against the sim racing guys, though, as we switched on board to Graham Carroll, warming up the tyres and getting ready for his first qualifying lap on the
Right.
Berlin street circuit.
I mean, if it feels a bit early in the morning, then I think you guys can understand why these racers have got out of bed. $1 million prize pool, it's going to be plenty of incentive to be waking up bright and early on a Saturday.
Yeah, and of course, a really big thing to talk about that's happened in between the last round in Paris and this round is that Graham Carroll, of course, has been lucky enough to be invited by Formula E and get a run in the real life car in during the build up to the round in Marrakesh. And yeah, really, he definitely enjoyed the experience, I think, and it was sort of a taster kind of little prize from winning in the first time out in Long Beach. And I think Gregor Houti might feel a little bit jealous because he won one too, and he hasn't had a run yet. But I guess it's because of the gaps in the Formula E schedule. It just hasn't quite worked in his favour. But Graham Carr, of course, yeah, had really enjoyed the experience. And one of the things that he was asked about how he had been so successful in this and sort of, and the answer he gave was quite interesting because he said basically he treats it like a job. He sort of gets it quite early and plows a lot of time into this.
I mean, that's the attitude you have to have in the end, isn't it? With these sim races,
Absolutely, you
it's
can't
so
just do it for
competitive
fun
now,
all the
sim
time.
racing. Drivers, they have to, coming out of the pits there without a front wing and a front wheel. It's not going to be
Trying to
the,
lose weight, I think.
yeah,
Usy's just thinking, oh,
exactly.
I'll lose it later on, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, don't bother putting it back on, yeah. Um, Yeah, no, I mean, these guys, we're getting towards more and more of a sort of professional sim racing scene year on year, and you just have to take it super serious now if you want to be a competitor
Especially
in
with the
these
money
kind
on
of
offer as
races.
well. It's sort of, that's another thing that Graham said, that so you can earn so much more money at sort of something like the Vegas eRace rather than competing at Carroll course. A real life racer won last year, won the Walter Hayes Trophy at Silverstone for Formula Ford 1600 cars, and this year, of course, not quite so successful and sort of a bit. I'm not sure if he's lower on budget this season, but he's sort of definitely hoping that it can revitalise his real life career if he does well. Manages to qualify, of course, and does well in Vegas.
Something else we should mention is how great it is to see Formula E getting behind these kinds of
Oh,
sim racing
absolutely.
activities. They've always been a leader in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've only had a 2 or 3 year history now, so but yeah, ever since the beginning, they've always been a keen. I would say, yeah, I think it's fair to say, champion of esports, really, and yeah, really good to see them putting out the promotion for this. Of course, anyone new coming here, starting in Berlin with only 2 rounds left, is going to have a little bit of a not an enviable task of trying to get into that top 10. But having a drop score is definitely going to help out a little bit, ease the pain a bit of missing at least one round. So.
Absolutely. I mean, if you come back into the competition at this stage, then obviously you can't sort of catch up back to the sort of the three full races that people are looking for at the end of the championship. So you will be at a disadvantage. At the same time, with 40 points on offer on the Sunday and 15 points on offer on the Saturday, good results could still see you qualifying for that final event.
Yeah, true. And just a reminder about the points. The top 5 at the end of this semi-final. Once we've done I believe it's around about 40 laps or so. We'll see once the race starts how many it is. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but at the end of that, the top 5 go through to the final, which is in the evening tomorrow. Yeah, I think at about 4 p.m. GMT. That's what's listed on the calendar anyway. But we'll see whether we stick to that. And everyone else also scores points. So I think the top 5 automatically score 15 points, but everyone below them, I think 6 scores 14, and it sort of goes down in 2-point increments. So even if you finish, it's still good points, because you never know what can happen. You're going to need every little point here. As we watch Mark Gassner starting a lap now, the timing beam just after the hairpin actually, which is the first corner. So you're going to see people could be on a really good lap, and you could mess up that hairpin, and it could leak time away. It's very easy to do. We saw a lot of real life drivers doing that in the real race, of course, a few months back. So yeah. And another thing I really like that they've changed since the last round is they've actually put different coloured helmets for the cars. I just noticed now. That makes it a lot easier for us in commentary to tell all these drivers apart, especially some of them like to choose very similar looking Cloud Sport skins. The sort of blues and purples and reds, of course, Redline guys, the Team Redline drivers like Alexiusi, all tending to go for the blood red car. And that makes it, if they're battling each other, you can't really tell who's ahead until the timing screen tells you, so. Yeah, let's look at the time so far in the session as Mark Gassner stops on track. Enough of that lap, I guess, as he's in
Yeah,
second right now to Graham Carroll, and Graham Carroll, a pretty good time here, 53.5. I think that's definitely one of the quicker times. The quickest times we were seeing were sort of high 52s in the hot laps. So, but Mark Gassner, a local driver, of course, not far behind, 53.736. Then we got Bono Rees, famous Formula Sim racing driver. He's on a 53.8. Louis Dalmau, a little bit under he did qualify for the final in Long Beach, but was very much under the radar in Paris, and he seems to be back on the pace here from what I've seen in hot laps. He's got 54.099, and then David Legraf is in 5th with a 54.2. I believe his last name is Legraf, but they just call it Lay on the timing screens, which is slightly confusing.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, these guys are 53.5 on pole position right now. That's a decent time, but I mean, I'd be expecting to see a little bit faster than that to absolutely guarantee it. That Graham Carroll has been the class of the field, excepting one or two drivers.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
yeah, it'll take a challenge to beat him in the race, I think. But for me, pole position is going to be a little bit faster than that. We've got 12 minutes left of the session now, so there's plenty of time for these guys to hammer in a lap that they're really happy with.
Yeah, lovely onboard shot, getting back again with Mark Gassner in his bright putrid green car. as he bumps over the chicane. Lovely camera shot. Really need to see more of this. It's just sort of really quite low to the ground, of course. Really good action shot here. As he seems to be up on this lap, I think. Not by much, but enough. Yeah, by a 0.027. So let's see if he can keep the momentum here as he goes round the fountain on Strausberger Platz. And really trying to... Oh, bumping the wall there on the outside. Getting ready for that penultimate corner here. Well, not penultimate, of course. I keep forgetting the layout. He's just going over the starting grid right now. No, actually, he's warming the tyres up. So I think he knew he lost a bit of time there, bumping the wall.
You were saying earlier, Ed, there's an interesting layout here between the start-finish grid and the timing for these laps.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sort of I guess it's a sort of not really a requirement. Oh, as we see Graham Carroll retaking fast. Bonohis did jump in briefly for the fastest lap for 53.5, but Graham Carroll gone 2/10 under that now. So yeah, just keeping it up front there. Graham Carroll doesn't want a repeat of what happened in Paris, where of course he was leading and then he had a steering wheel failure at the pit stop, and that cost him 12 seconds to Bonohis, and that sort of unraveled his race and sort of hurt his chances in the final hugely. Because he felt he could easily have started in the top 4 and got some good points. Instead, he started 12th, and he just about finished in the top 10 due to a penalty for David Greco, who's in one of the later groups. I think in the last one, actually, yeah, in Group 4. So, yeah, Graham Carroll and Bonohis really battling it out now. Bonohis probably one of the main drivers here that's going to challenge him today in the semi-final.
Sure, and Carroll had some particularly choice words that he tweeted out to the manufacturer of his steering wheel after
Yeah, I
the
believe
last
he's
event.
got a new wheel since then, actually.
Yeah, he was not a happy bunny after that malfunction, which, as you say, cost him a much better position in the race than he ultimately
I'm
got.
sure getting a whole hour in the Formula E car and having tuition from Nelson Piquet Jr. and Jerome D'Ambrosio cheered him up a little bit, maybe made him help him get a little bit over it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but
absolutely.
seriously, Graham Carroll, really nice guy to deal with. I'm not surprised that he got it, and I think he really deserves it, especially if you look at in real. Oh, it's Bonohis really coming to grief there at the exit of that chicane, about where the infamous Bob the Bollard that caused so much grief in real life as well. As we thought we saw him there exiting the pits without the front wing, so the mechanics in a real rush to get him out again with 9 minutes left of the session.
I mean, these cars, we see them on multiple tracks now, really attacking these curbs, these quite high curbed Formula E tracks. And that's where the speed in the car is, so you want to be just nailing it as close to the wall as you possibly can. And an inch wrong and suddenly your car is
No, sometimes less than that, Ali.
Exactly. I mean, that's the accuracy which these guys have to drive. So yeah, it just takes a small mistake and you see something very spectacular like that.
Indeed, yeah, and in the race, it's not such a big issue in qualifying, of course, because you can always get back to the pits and repair it. But yeah, in the race, it can be quite fatal to your chances if you're not careful, especially if sometimes if you're in a good position, you can lose the front wing and kind of get away with it. But yeah, it makes your task, especially if you're low down the field, a lot harder, and you often have to pit for repairs, which you never really want to do more than one pit stop in these races. It can really bring you out of sequence and put you in traffic because the pit stops take so long, of course.
For sure. I mean, we've seen these blue flags as a killer in these races. These tracks are generally about a minute, slightly under a minute per lap. So if you find yourself going into the pits after taking damage, you can easily be caught up in blue flags as the leaders come by, and that just compounds the problems that you're going to have in your race.
Yeah, Alex, you see up to third now, just behind Bonohis, 53.593 to Bonohis' 53.519. Well, I say that Alex Yusi has just set a lap a 10th quicker than Bonohis to take second place, and now he's just pit, so obviously quite content with that effort for now. He's going back out now.
Yeah.
Alex Yusi, a good thing to mention Alex Yusi because he didn't quite make it to. I think he did qualify for the semi-finals, but I can't remember exactly what happened. But Yusi didn't make the final in Long Beach, but did get a very good result with 6th place in the as we see another. It's Pedro Martins really taking way too much on the inside on the chicane and sort of saying, oh, well, no, he's getting out of shape in the turn just after the chicane. That must be turns turn 3. And yeah, but Alexa Usyk did compete in Paris with a broken arm. Actually, we didn't know it at the time in commentary, and yeah, so it's worth mentioning now. But he struggled along and managed to get 6th place out of that race. So yeah,
Yep.
and Usyk, of course, he can drop the first round in Long Beach, but that means there's a lot of pressure on him to get good results in the remaining rounds. Usyk definitely one of the challengers here, and I suspect if it comes to it, a lot of his red line teammates, knowing that he's a bit lower down the scoreboard, might try and work to help him out a bit. Because always good to have another ally there when they get to Vegas.
For sure, those kind of racing injured stories, they're always so heroic, aren't they? You know,
Yeah, Nicky
fantastic effort
Lauda
from
coming
him.
back from his burns at Nürburgring. This isn't quite the same. This is more like Nicky Lauda falling off a tractor and spraining his ankle a bit or
Yeah,
whatever.
slightly more mundane.
But yeah, sometimes you need a little mundane heroics like that. And
Absolutely.
yeah, definitely UC gained a lot of credit from it. I think the Formula E website listed him as the driver of the day because of that performance. And of course, we did see a bit of him during the race. He had to negotiate, I think, Miguel Ballesta, who decided to stay out way longer than anyone else. I think because of the nature of the Berlin track, we won't see people trying crazy strategies like Ballesta did, trying to stay out for pretty much 75% of the race distance and then pitting. Because that ended up with him. Because I think he was quite slow compared to Gregor. No offense, but he was quite slow compared to Gregor Hutu and the red line guys who were at the top. And he sort of created a massive roadblock during that race. So it was interesting for us, exciting for the spectators, but for his sake, I sort of hope he doesn't try a silly strategy again like that when we get to his group. But 4 minutes left, or just under 5 minutes left of the session now, as we are right on board with Usi in the red helmet and the red car, driving around, and just, I think on the end, he's about to start a hot lap once he gets to the end of that hairpin. And
Right.
do you think he can beat Carroll here?
I mean, he's going to have to hook up a pretty decent lap time to beat
He's
Carroll.
not far from Carroll's time.
300ths of a second off it at the
almost
moment.
200s.
He'll be unhappy with that in a way, you know. I mean, 300ths of a second isn't much. That's
He is
like hooking
300,
up
sorry.
one corner just a little bit better. So I mean, there was possibility in that last lap time. He could easily have been sitting on pole position already with that lap. But yeah, I mean, I think he knows that Carroll's mortal. You know, he knows he's not an alien.
I noticed that chicane, a lot of them really deliberately kind of running wide and sort of getting away with it. I wonder if that's going to bite someone in the race. As we see Alexei Usyk up on his time slightly here by about, it's just under a tenth. As you see him go back towards the Strasburger Platz and the fountain section. And really cugging the inside, just hooking up the apexes beautifully here. This could be a very strong lap, as we watch from the helicopter camera. And but start finish line, not the end of the lap yet. Doesn't need to get through that hairpin. And yeah, time ticking away here for people who want a really good grid position.
2/10 up on his lap though. Usyk now coming round towards the
This could be
final
it.
section. There you go, pole position and a 53.20.
He gained all his time in the first two sectors, fastest of anybody. The last sector, not quite as quick, I don't think. I think Bonohi still has the fastest last sector, but only just, not so much time in that last section. But yeah, Usyk was fastest on the hot laps and finally able to transfer that here. Can Graham Carroll fight back though?
Here's Carroll out on the track. It's not a great first sector for him. We're seeing him
he's still got
down.
3 minutes, so hopefully he can put a bit of a challenge. We always like to see our qualifying sessions build to a crescendo rather than just peter out unexcitingly.
Yeah, and I mean that lap from Usyk will certainly have Carroll interested, won't it? That would have been a wake-up call for him for sure.
Do you think Carroll will be thinking, as let's let him start his hot lap as he's weaving, putting temperature in the tyres, of course. But do you think Carroll will be thinking, especially more in the race probably, that he doesn't need to beat Usyk in order to see him getting the widest line possible into the hairpin to start off his lap? Here we go. But do you think Carroll needs to beat Usyk today, or do you think if he finishes second in this final, he'll sort of be content with starting in, say, 5th place, or no worse than that?
You know, Carroll, you know, I think these guys are all full races. You know, we're seeing them in the first heat of the weekend here. You know, I can't believe he'd be doing anything other than just coming out guns blazing, just trying to push that pace as far as he can.
Yeah.
Seeing him here hooking up the second sector, just...
He's still a few temps down though, so it seems that maybe he's lost a lot of it in the first part of the lap. But there's still time for another go, of course. Let's hope there's enough time and energy in this car. Well, there should be, to be honest, as we see him bailing out now and weaving on the straight, trying to maybe didn't quite have enough grip in those heat in those tyres. They weren't sticky enough to give him the grip he needed. And we cut back to Bono Huis having his own go. I think Bono Huis, knowing that he needs to, he's quite good in the last sector, of course, as you mentioned, but two temps down on Carroll and another further temp down on Usi, so he needs to pull out something quite special here to beat his Redline teammate and the Apex Racing UK driver.
Further down the field, Dalmau is setting a fastest first sector for him, so it'll be great to see if he can move up from 5th position where he currently is.
Yeah, Dalmau, the Spanish driver, trying to beat Mark Gaster in 4th, who's of course on home turf. Mark Gaster did very well in Paris, I felt. Finished just outside the top 10, I think, in about 12th or 13th, and really acquitted himself well, and sort of like Usi, I think, didn't score that well in Long Beach, so really looking to do the damage now in the later part of the season. And they, interesting, Gaster only 2 temps behind Bono Huis, and Dalmau further temp down, of course, as you said.
What was that last corner from Dalmau? That was like a drift turn. Just hung the back out and sort of skidded it in.
I'm not sure it's going to gain him any time.
I doubt it somehow.
Yeah, I'll give him a few style points for that, at least, you know.
For sure.
A for effort. Yeah, so
that's amazing.
And Carroll, 23 seconds left in the session. Can he start another lap? This is something we've seen before. Drivers maybe taking it a bit too easy on the warm-up laps and just missing out. I think he's just got about enough time to set this lap, as long as he doesn't hang about over the first hairpin. Will he know how much time he has left? 5 seconds to go. Here we go. Where is that timing line? Just now. So yes, I think he just made it there. Did he, Ali?
Yeah, for sure. He's on this lap, so this is the last chance for Graham Carroll, pushing down the
and
first
he'll be last
straight.
over the line. As you see, Usi has stopped now, so Usi will not improve. So Carroll knows that's the benchmark he has to beat, as he really whacks it into that chicane wall.
It's not bad though, only 500ths down on his best lap, so this lap has promise. You can find 500ths of a second later in the lap.
But he really needs to be a bit further ahead. As you see Gassner, Legraf and Diaz completing their laps as well. So this is it for Graham Carroll. Really needs to do this if he wants to be on pole. And as you see him going over that starting grid, just need to get that hairpin hooked up. Yeah, I think this isn't going to be quicker from Graham Carroll. He may have to settle for second here. Oh, really pushing it into that hairpin. He's locking up the rip brake right into the wall, trying to get as much time as possible. That was a Ayrton Senna kind of no compromise qualifying move at the end there. I think I remember him. Then Senna's definitely the kind of driver who would have crashed into a wall at the. I think he actually did that at Magny Cours in Formula 1 once, when they had a weird layout and they changed the layout to stop Ayrton Senna from crashing to gain time at the end of the lap, which is kind of funny, but a little dangerous, of course. But, yeah, you can get away with it in a sim, of course. So yeah, that's qualifying over, and I guess we'll have a little bit of a warm up just to make sure that everything is settled from the race stewards and sort of in order for the race. But yeah, attention very much focused now on our first semi-final coming up. Usi starting it perfectly, you have to say.
Yep, Usi starting from pole. He's going to be followed by Graham Carroll, who's only a tenth and a little bit behind him, but an important tenth and a bit. Hoos in 3rd, Gassner 4th, Dalmau in 5th. Got David Lee in 6th. I think you said his name was a little bit longer than that, but I'm afraid I've forgotten. Legarth in 6th. Diaz in 7th, Martins in 8th, and Danimbe in 9th.
Yeah, definitely the low runners, I think, are going to have to either be quite aggressive, or they're going to have to play it safe and play the long game and hope that those ahead run into difficulties and drop out. Bit of a tough group this. I think the only one I can see maybe making mistakes is Dalmau. Of course, we saw him drifting all over the place, so I think he won't be pushing quite so hard in the race, at least not on the first lap anyway. But yeah, Usi, Carroll, Huis and Gassner, provided no bizarre misfortune strikes any of them, I think they should be through to the final. But you never know with this. You can't be too complacent, and I hope I haven't put the curse on any of them.
For sure. I mean, that chicane, it'll be turn 2 and 3 in the race, but turn 1 and 2 in qualifying. If we see someone higher up the field in the leading pack make a mistake there, it's a difficult place to avoid just careering into the car in front if they are slowing down rapidly.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about overtaking opportunities. I think probably the best overtaking opportunity would be that hairpin, which is effectively the final corner on the track. And at the start, of course, just before that, I remember watching a real life start. Robin Freins, the very talented Dutch driver, was able to gain a lot of places by going around the outside, and we see it a lot on street tracks that start with a hairpin from a standing start. If people get boxed in around each other on the inside, you go for the outside, and you just get a bit more space, a bit better run up, and it can really gain you positions at the start, of course. And at the start with these Formula E tracks, it can be a little bit difficult to overtake sometimes compared to some traditional circuits we see where there's lots of runoff. You can sort of, if the move doesn't quite work out, you can just about get away with it and fight another day. Not quite the case here with the walls on all sides. So, and especially at that chicane, we saw people hitting the inside, hitting the outside. I mean, it's contact mania here. So,
yeah.
The chicane, I don't think quite a good place to overtake. There's not quite enough space unless you get a brilliant run up from the hairpin. But
yeah,
I would say.
I don't think there's going to be overtaking
4.
in the chicane, but I think people will mash. There's a huge amount of time to be found in those two little corners, and so you'll see people maybe losing time through the chicane, someone behind getting a run through turn 4, which looks almost flat, and then attacking turn 5 and turn 6 on the sort of slightly longer hairpin that you see.
Yeah, that longer hairpin is actually another good overtaking spot. In the real race, of course. Talking about the real race, it's not going to be that relevant as the warm-up session begins before the race. So the hairpin at turn 5, I think we're talking about.
Yeah,
that's actually a good overtaking spot. I remember seeing Sebastian Buemi go down the inside of John-Eric Verne for the lead, and a very, very brave move. So I think a lot less likely to see moves there than the hairpin, but if you do see a move, it's going to be a very good one. I think.
Yeah,
As someone like Mohamed Patel, who's in the final group, gained a bit of a reputation for being a pass master in Paris before he got untimely and unfortunately disconnected. So Patel, I talked to him a little bit, he said he was a bit struggling, but I bet you that he'll be trying to figure out where he can put the moves on if he doesn't qualify quite so well once again. But yeah, let's focus on our guys here. Bono Grease, of course, 9th in Long Beach, and he was the main beneficiary from Graham Carroll last time. They just so happened to be in the same semi-final again as in Paris. But Bono Grease started, I think, in 4th in the final, lost a few places at the start, and sort of Bono Grease, you sort of feel he should be doing a little bit higher up, in terms of the order. Especially, he sort of has a bit of a fearsome reputation from Formula Sim Racing and a couple of other games categories he's been playing in sim racing. So I'm not sure if he'll feel sort of satisfied that he's sort of in the hunt and sort of solidly in the top 10, or whether he'll be thinking, I want to be a bit more secure so that I don't have to win in London to ensure that I go through.
Yeah, I mean, Hoost, he's a great racer. He's obviously in the same team in first position, so we might
as
see
Usi, yeah.
Those two guys being able to gang up on Carroll a little bit throughout this race.
Could be that Usi will box Carroll in,
Exactly, make space for Hoost. Who knows? Let's see how much synchronized driving we can.
And one thing that I remember who he's doing was that in Paris he got out qualified in the semi-final by Polish driver Kamil Franczak, and one of the things that what ended up happening was that Franczak lost a lot of pace in the race and sort of ended up defending a lot from Bono Hughes. And one of the things what Hughes was able to do to get past was that they came across a back marker who just had an incident, and Franczak sort of first on the scene didn't quite react in time and ended up getting stuck behind him, and Hughes went round the outside of both of them. It was a really good opportunist overtake, and it could be that Bono Hughes looking to revitalise some of that Paris magic in that semi-final that put him in such a strong position for the final, of course.
We're seeing a slight change in track layout here from the qualifying to the race.
Yeah,
there's a little bit more
because they must have complained about it to the stewards and just go for the bigger sausage curbs, looping policeman things. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, we do have race marshals here looking over the drivers. They won't be allowed to be cutting that chicane because I think there's quite a lot of speed in there, and I think that's why we saw the walls coming up before qualifying.
Yeah, and but that does mean people can get away cutting a little bit more on the inside, so it might mean that we see less people hitting the wall, of course, but if they get out of shape, it could destabilize the cars a bit more as well, so I guess the trade-off is fairly fair. But thanks to the race stewards for highlighting that to us on the screen. But Yeah, so yeah, definitely a lot to look forward to in this first semi-final of some of the big hitters in this one. But not so good for the guys who are just behind the top guys. I think that's Bono, who's just chilling out in the outside the last corner, just saying hi to EC, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I've been thinking about all this team stuff. I did a little bit of researching on Road to Vegas, how the actual Vegas Visa Vegas eRace is going to work. In terms of, I'm wondering why they needed 10 qualifiers specifically. It turns out it's not an arbitrary number. What it turns out is that they need that because there are 10 teams, and well, at least this is what Mahindra is saying. I'm not sure if other teams can cooperate as well on this, but what Mahindra was saying was that they're going to use one of the drivers in the top 10 as effectively their third driver in this in the Visa Vegas E-Race, and the plan is that, yeah, I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work in terms of team dynamic, but especially the guys, if there's a lot of red line guys, I'm sure they're going to work together, not for the team that there's a Formula E team that they end up driving for, that they have maybe slightly less affiliation for, because the Formula teams will just pick the best ones, obviously, or, I guess, I'm not sure who will get first pick or how exactly that will work, but that does sound really interesting and could add a bit of a extra dimension to the final. And of course, it means that easier to tell who's who with the different car skins, of course.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this idea that the sort of Formula E teams will each adopt some of the drivers, they'll race in their
Adopt
liveries,
them, they're like
they'll
orphans or
for the
something.
weekend. It's something which has been quite interestingly sort of suggested by I think it was Tom Halls during the London E-Prix last year. Sorry, earlier this year, excuse me, and we're not quite in
Yeah.
2017 yet.
Mm.
With this idea of there being a third driver in each
During the actual races, not
during
just
the actual races.
races.
And the idea there was that people would be able to be a sort of a synchronized. There'd be the Formula E race happening at the same time. There'd be an E-Prix like the one we're seeing here taking place, and the points from one and the points from the other would both sort of combine towards the manufacturer's championship points.
Well, of course, I'm not sure if that would be ridiculous. And there was the other thing I think Tom Halls mentioned was having a sort of having the virtual drivers either have their own podium or sort of a little mini step at the bottom of the real podium. I think that idea needs it's the basic idea of getting them involved. I think is a good one, but I think it would need a little bit of fine tuning, especially in terms of when you look at the lap times they set here. The top guys here are several seconds faster than the real life Formula E guys. Different conditions like different track grit. I think it could be a lot more in favour of these guys in terms of
Yeah,
because they're on the sim rather.
I absolutely agree. Yeah.
Or that you could get someone like Carroll, who's like the third driver, who does the sim racing normally, and then if one of the main drivers gets injured, I'll put him in the real car, or just fly him out from Scotland or wherever, and take him to like the sunny side of the world, like Marrakesh, of course. I mean, they've done it before. So.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like a testament to how sort of these racing sims, they're called sims, but how closely they are managing to simulate real racing. That there is that kind of transferability of skill between what we're looking at here, R Factor 2, and real racing.
Yeah, the only thing that's slightly unconvincing about R Factor 2 is the crowd and the sort of automatons in the background watching that. They don't need to be that realistic. It's more about the track and the car dynamics and handling, and they got that pretty much spot on. Especially the one of the things that's really strong about R Factor 2 compared to some of the other sims is the tire wear modeling. That it's a really big factor, and we saw that play a lot in Paris. That the undercut was very strong. People who pit slightly earlier than their rivals, got the fresher tires from the new car on, were able to exploit that and sort of either maintain position or pull out a bigger gap or gain a few more positions. And it's sort of, as we see, Graham Carroll getting a nice little controlled lock-up / drift there and into the hairpin. Not sure if he needs to push that much in the warm-up, but often in the warm-up we see drivers having pretend races with one another just to sort of practice about giving each other room, and sort of, it's very important in this. Sometimes you don't always judge the space. Sometimes we see it with some of the less experienced drivers that sometimes they think they think they're further ahead than they actually are. They don't always give the space, and I believe their driver in this group, I remember having a big crash in Paris. I'm trying to remember. Oh no, I think that's Ricky Wilson in the second group. I was just thinking of who got reprimanded for couple of incidents in Paris. I think to be fair, not necessarily just his fault. I think there was lag involved there as well. But we'll see how Ricky Wilson gets on later. But yeah, hopefully we're starting fairly soon now. I think because not 9 minutes elapsed from this warm-up session, so I think everyone's in a pretty good state of mind, ready for the race. As we see, yeah, just on cue. Wow, it's like they're listening to me. Wow.
It's going to be interesting to see where pole position lines up here. I'm not sure if it's the inside of the track or the outside of the track. I should think it would be the inside just because that hairpin is such a good overtaking opportunity that it would almost be not an advantage to be on the outside of this track.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I was saying at the outside, it was sort of how that worked in real life, that they were sort of holding each other up on the inside, so Robin Frying decided to try something different and really profited from that in that particular race. And later on in the race, he made a couple of really good sort of almost doing what Graham Carroll's doing, sideways overtakes. So you see the warm-up lap begin. Who should do the start? Shall I do the start? Or do you
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, warm-up lap now. This is probably one of the few venues where they do the warm-up lap, and it's quite similar to real life. In real life, the pre-starting grid is about where they are now, where that visa board is on your screen, and then they do all pretty much 99% of the lap. The only one they don't do is the hairpin on the warm-up lap, and then they start at the traditional starting grid. So this is about as closest as we can get it to real life in this instance. So we're kind of lucky that it just worked out like that. But
At the top of the screen there, we're finding out at the same time as you this time around, 48 laps for this race. So that's going to be about 45 minutes, I think, just under a minute a lap.
Yeah, and of course strategically, this will be the same distance as the final, of course. So they'll be thinking about how they manage their cars, how they manage all the parameters to try and either eke that gap out, maybe get a bit more energy to use at the end, or whether they go for the undercut. Really good first stint and then manage later on. You see a lovely fountain in the background on Strasbourg Platz, Strasbourg Platz rather. But yeah, Uzi lining up now with Carroll, Huis, and Gassner just behind, and so Uzi in the red car, Carroll in the blue car, and we wait for the rest of the grid to form up. 10 starters it seems, so slightly small grid, but they've all got great chance of getting some good points here and getting through to the final. So we wait for the lights to go on now. It's a beautiful day in Berlin, as ever, and everyone looking to make the most of it. It doesn't rain in these races, so no danger of that. Long time for the lights to go on, yeah.
Long wait.
Oh, here we go, I think. 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights, and they go out. And are we off? Yes, we are. So I think Uzi has kept the lead. Yeah, he has. And Gassner actually making a brilliant start there, but not able to gain any positions. Huis going very wide around the outside and actually losing out to Gassner while he was trying to pass Carroll. I think Dalmau, a couple others getting side by side there. But Uzi, dream start for him. He's kept the lead. And Bono Huis, he has got back past Gassner down the straight there. So I think Gassner may have made an error there or something, or not quite able to take advantage as I first thought. But yes, I think Uzi now are going to hope to control the pace, keep Carroll and the rest of the pack behind him for the duration of this semi-final.
Huis and Gassner, though, still chasing Carroll behind our leader here. So those two guys looking very punchy here. That violently green car. It must be all over
someone
the
that
mirrors
threw
of
up
Huis.
on that, I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
You think maybe he chose it to distract the guy in front? That's an amazing color.
Yeah, it definitely helps him stand out. I like guys to do that. And he's put the helmet the same color as well, so. Or it could be that it's the same color as the car. I'm not really sure about that. But I like having the new coloured-in helmets. Before they were all grey, and that wasn't exciting to look at. But anyway, the order remaining the same. Gap at the front is, let's see, 1.5 seconds is the lead that UC has over Carroll. And Huis is 6 tenths behind, half a second behind rather, and then Gassner 4 tenths behind him. So yeah, the pack puncher, and the last guy in qualifying position right now is Louis Dalmau in 5th, with Diaf a second down on him.
Right, Dalmau on the button at the moment, so he's going to be under pressure. But this battle for second that we're watching here, that's Carroll in second, chased by Huis, chased by Gassner in the green. Going to be the talk of the race, I think.
Oh, and something I alluded to earlier, of course, is that you might think that, oh, they're in position now, so they can just afford to coast around, cruise and collect, and get to the final and not make any mistakes. But one thing you've got to remember that is that your time from this semi-final counts towards your group position as well as your position in the final. So in the semi-final rather, they both count towards your group position in the final. As you see, Milnek bumping off the wall and sort of changing direction there. It's weird seeing cars using it to steer. I don't think you could. I think there's a bit more tolerance in the a bit more buff in the suspension here on these Formula E cars in this game than in real life, because they wouldn't be getting away with that in real life quite as much. But yeah, as I was saying, your time in this race counts towards your group position. So even Usi, he might be thinking, yeah, if I just cruise around, I'll probably start in the top 4. But he might be thinking, I do have a good chance to start on pole here. So Carroll locking the rear brakes into the hairpin again, and yeah, definitely more under pressure from Ruiz behind than being close to Usi in front now. Usi 1.5 seconds ahead.
Yeah,
Still.
we're seeing some real rally car style drifting around that first hairpin. It shows how tightly sprung these cars are on their rears, so super grippy on the front end.
I think it was I was looking at David Greco, and he was saying that he was still looking for that perfect setup, and it just really shows how important that is for these cars, especially around a street circuit. You need to get the springs and the dampers all in the right positions to make sure that they've got enough tolerance to go over those curves without being completely destabilized. But yeah, order remaining pretty much the same now as the race is starting to settle down. You see big gaps here. Pedro Martins 3 seconds behind Alex Diaz, so I think that Martins, Milnek, Ley and Denimbe sort of seeing their chances of getting into that top 5 slip away from them. But Alex Diaz still just about in the hunt for 5th place here.
Yeah, Diaz not falling away from Dalmau at the pace Dalmau might have wanted it to happen. Still 1.7 seconds between them, so he can't throw a move from there.
I think Dalmau is sort of hoping that Alex crashes out here.
Yeah, exactly. They're both hoping.
It's a nice, boring race, but that's not what we want as spectators. We want action. We want excitement. And yeah, we're just going to have to wait until that happens. It's a very patient game, Formula E. Sometimes you have to. It's more about watching the mastery at the wheel than wall-to-wall action all the time, like we see in real life. Often.
For sure. I mean, these guys, you've got to bear in mind that these tracks are just they're so punishing, and we've seen so many people retiring from these heat races, especially on the Saturdays of these events, just because there's no runoff space. I hope we don't see that again, because so few taking part in this one compared to normal. About half the field is already wiped out from not bothering to qualify. So. You see David Legraf getting past Milnek. Not sure where that happened. Most likely either at the hairpin or one of the corners just before. But yeah, that's interesting. Good to see Legraf making some progress in the race for once. I remember he was a bit of a backmarker in Paris and sort of not really huge. Well, sort of ended up being more of a factor holding up the leaders because he decided to. I think he either pit first or he pit later. Can't remember which. But yeah, definitely good to see David really putting the pressure on, and let's see if he can get past Pedro Martins 7th now and maybe get himself in contention for one of those top 5 spots. Riding on board with Carroll now. He seems to be putting the magnets on a little bit, just catching on Usi down the first straight.
Again, the rear lost traction that they have. I'm not sure if he's the only one doing that. It could be the way he set up the car, or just Carroll's driving style. I did say he's got a new steering wheel, so maybe he's just still getting used to that, but yeah, definitely a good debut for that wheel so far, I reckon. He just needs to make sure that Usi doesn't get too far out of sight, I think.
I mean, you want a little bit of oversteer in your car, especially with these long second sector that we're just moving into now with Carroll. So there's these long sweepers.
Yeah, here,
if you pick up understeer here, you're going to murder your front tyres in no time at all.
Yeah, I think probably better have a slightly more, oversteery set that sort of bites into the corners exactly where you want to. And occasionally maybe the back end lets go, but we did see in real life Loic Duval having the area around the fountain just in the Strasburger Platz, the rear end just let go on him, and he sort of had a dramatic retirement that had a huge outcome there. As we see Milnek actually repassing David Legraf, so I guess David Legraf a bit of a flash in the pan there, or maybe Milnek made a mistake and is now just recovering. But either way, that battling is well, he's still 2 seconds behind Pedro Martins. Pedro Martins just 5 seconds behind Alex Diaz now. So yeah, the gaps lower down, definitely quite big. And Hiram Denimbe actually 23 seconds down now, so I'm not sure what's happened to him. Maybe some kind of dramatic incident. He may have had to pit already, but he could be the first guy to be lapped here, which is never a nice feeling. But so we can sort of keep his pace up and sort of, you never know what could happen. Especially if you're dead last, it's never a good reason to give up. And finishing 10th, still, that's good points.
For sure, for sure. You want to keep pushing throughout these races. We've seen people, it doesn't take much to push a little bit too hard to knock a wheel off the car. I don't think there's some pieces of damage which aren't reparable in the pits, so you're going to find yourself having to retire if you knock a tire off your car, I think. So there's all the chance in the world that the NBA or
I think we
any of
just
the
saw
guys from the
Milnek
back
in
could come
the
back.
graph there, just cut away from them as they were side by side of each other, fighting for 8th place. So yes, is late just after being repassed and trying to put the pressure back on Milnek. So I wonder where he was making the moves there. It could just be, like I suspect that Milnek made a mistake just like that, locking up into turn 5. But David Lay not quite close enough to get alongside, and yeah, he'll have to. I think he'll be behind for another lap.
Yeah, Legraf though piling on the pressure, and this is the guy we've been seeing on the move this weekend. He's I suspect maybe a little mistake. Let Malnek bow again because you can see that
he's been on the
Legraf
move, but
has
he's
the
been
pace.
up and down. I think. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see who's setting the good sector times right now. Usi is fastest in the second sector, but Carroll is fastest in the first and last sectors. Usi setting the fastest lap of the race so far, 53.695.
That's great pace, 53.6 in
That's
the
about
race
what he was setting in
itself.
qualifying as well.
Yeah, there's not a lot of difference there, and that's with a big fat concrete wall
That's
in the middle of that
interesting,
chicane.
yeah, because we often see them not pushing anywhere near as hard in the races as in qualifying, because they don't often need to, especially in the lead, as we see the graph really coasting up to the gearbox here of Milnek.
He looks so good on the brakes, doesn't he? Just the way it closes in. We could see a move from the graph any lap now.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things to watch in these sort of battles is, thought about it, just backed out there, and all bumped the inside of the curve. So got to be eager there, David. Need to calm down a bit. You'll get him soon, but if you keep driving the way you were, but that gives Milnek a little bit of breathing space now. So the Polish driver stays in 8th place for the time being.
Right, but not far up the road from Milnek is Martin, so if he's going to have to put the pace on, he's going to find himself capped by Martin's ahead, and things could really get quite spicy with the three of them battling.
Yeah, oh, someone stopped there, 10 laps. I believe that's Denimbe, who is, he's either locked up at the first chicane and just gotten stuck on lap 9, or he has decided to let everyone through. I'm not sure of that. We'll see if he gets moving again, but I suspect he may have chosen. He hasn't retired yet, but I expect he may be about to. Let's see if he can negotiate, because he wasn't on the racing line, was he?
No, he's often parked off in the right-hand side of the track, quite visible, but not ideal, obviously. So I mean, it won't affect these guys necessarily.
It would be a bit distracting, though.
Yeah, you don't want to see a car park there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a real shame. It looks like Denimbe's afternoon his morning rather, has come to not the ending he would have wanted, and a premature one at that.
Yeah, great shame.
He wasn't doing too strongly before anyway, so I guess it's not a huge loss. But never like to see drivers retiring. I always love that angle there. Is Usi sliding a little bit at the rear, really heavy at the back. These cars, remember, so you need to make sure if you're drifting, you don't do too much, because you can easily lose control.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen good pace from Usi here. Really,
yeah, I think he's quite confident as well. He feels very much in control of the car. And I think Carroll also quite confident, but not quite. You can always tell there's a little bit of tentative, although he has caught up a bit in the last couple of laps. I think he sort of kept the gap fairly stable at least. And as you see, Denimbe has retired now, and he's missing off the timing screen. So I presume he has given up the ghost, which is a big shame. But David Lay, that puts David Lay in last position now. So really even more incentive to get past Milnek.
Absolutely, he's still 1.8 seconds behind after that little mistake after putting pressure on him. Oh, it's a cool view on board with Hoos through the winding sector. You can see him absolutely nailing those
love
apexes.
This driver's eye kind of view as well, right next to the helmet.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Carroll looks a lot further away from this angle than he does in the aerial shot. No offense. Sorry.
2.8 seconds up the road, Carroll at the moment from Hoos, who we're on board with. This is Gassner chasing in fourth, so just behind Hoos.
Yeah, and again, that brilliant nose cam view here as we go through the chicane. Yeah, negotiated that pretty well, actually, quite cleanly. Sort of like you see in real life. Except there's no nasty bollard. In real life, we saw there was the affectionately nicknamed Bob the Bollard, which took out, destroyed a lot of drivers' races because the Berlin stewards were very eager on the black and orange flags, and they said to pit people because of damage to minor damage to the front wing. Sam Bird in particular getting very frustrated. I remember, he had just hit it, scraped the bollard with his one of his pods on the front wing, but the pod was loose, but it wasn't falling off. He kept saying it was not falling off, but they did force him to pit eventually, and he ruined his race, and he was very unhappy about that. And of course, his teammate John O'Verne just kept going, kept hitting the bollard until the front wing collapsed completely. So yeah, thankfully that's not an issue for these guys, of course, especially now the wall gone. But yeah, that can be. It's got a fearsome reputation, that chicane.
It's a terrifying chicane. We're about to see Diaz here negotiate it, throwing his car in, and just the way the front just bumps over it.
Yeah.
Always a sort of coin flip if those front tires are going to grip up again and sort of bring you away from the wall. Speed these guys carry through
Diaz knows
there.
he's not going to qualify for the final, so he may as well push it a bit, I guess. Let's see what the gap is now to it was Dalmau, isn't it? Yeah, so the gap is 9 seconds. So yeah, he has lost a lot of time somewhere while we're watching all the stuff going on behind him. But yeah, it looks like UC just managing that, knowing he doesn't need to push to the absolute limit. He just needs to keep going. And almost
to get
2
to a point in
seconds
the
now,
race.
the gap to Carroll.
Starting to get to a point in the race now where the pit window sort of is starting to open. It wouldn't be unreasonable to pit at this point. Obviously, lap 24.
Yeah, a bit early, but yeah.
Bit early, yeah. He could probably just about make it. Lap 24 obviously will be the midway mark, and we do tend to see drivers taking 2 equal-sized stints.
Graham Carroll, of course, is someone who traditionally always sort of does that. Well, not always, but most of the time anyway. And yeah, it's sort of it's a pretty good policy, especially if you're not that good at maths. But these drivers tend to be, because it's sort of their business splits and lap times and sort of where I'm gaining time, where I'm losing time, what the suspension settings are, etc., wing settings.